Hello viewers and welcome to another Doctor Who episode review, and today I'm reviewing the Ark. So before I start reviewing it, there will be some spoilers, so if you want to see the episode and you've clicked on this video, then I do suggest you go and see the story first before you hear my thoughts, but it's up to you of course. So the Ark is the 5th story of the 3rd ever season of Doctor Who. So yeah, I have missed a few episodes, the other 4 stories in the 3rd season of Doctor Who, and that's because they're missing. If you want me to review any of the missing episodes because I've seen the telesnaps, then I will do, so just comment that below if you want me to do any of that, but I'm just going to leave the missing episodes out. So yeah, 3rd season and the 5th story. So the Ark was written by Paul Erickson and Leslie Scott. Leslie Scott is a credited writer who didn't actually write anything really. Maybe a small contribution, but hardly anything. I think she's actually the first ever woman to get credited. The written by for Doctor Who. First credited female Doctor Who writer, which is I think that's true. Anyway, the Ark was a 4-part story. Part 1, The Steel Sky, Part 2, The Plague, Part 3, The Return, and Part 4, The Bomb. And this story ran between the 5th of March 1966 and the 26th of March 1966. And the episode featured William Hartnell as the First Doctor, Peter Pears as Stephen Taylor, and Jackie Lane as Dodo Chaplet. So this episode is the first full adventure, the first full story to feature Dodo as a companion. I know that she was in the episode before, in The Massacre, but this is like a first full adventure. So you can tell this as when she's in the TARDIS and she's just come out and she's realised she's moved, and I think it was the end of episode 2 or part 2 of this story where she mentions that it only takes a couple of seconds and we've travelled 700 years later. So she kind of realises it. So yeah, she's just getting to grips with what sort of like the TARDIS does and who the Doctor and Stephen are. So yeah, it's her first full adventure. So I think there's mixed reviews on this episode. A lot of people think it's not too bad. They quite like it. And I've heard that quite a few people like, no, it's not one of the good ones of the first Doctor stories. My opinion is it's watchable. It's different. It's different like to any other first Doctor story. It just feels different. Maybe it's because of the writers, because I don't think they wrote another Doctor Who episode again. But it's not really a memorable episode. The creatures are probably memorable with the way they look, but for me, the creatures weren't threatening really. They were really. They just were intimidating. That's the word. They were just there really with the oversized beetle hairstyles and the one eye. The monoids, of course. So it was the first 2 parts were basically. It was set. I think it was Earth. It was set. I think it was 10 million years into the future. Yeah, I think it is 10 million years in the future, and basically these monoid creatures, Cyclops creatures, were like servants of the later humans, the humans around that time, because obviously the humans have changed over time, and they've been like, it's quite difficult to explain this. The humans, but they're not, because they don't really have a clue about the past. and they're all like wearing like a costume, and it's, I don't know, it's all like this sort of like zoo thing, like with all the different animals from like the different parts of Earth. I likened like an ark, like Noah's Ark, as Dodo mentioned in the episode. And there's these humans, like, I wouldn't say ruling, they're just like captains of stuff, and these monoids like the servants. And basically the story is where Dodo catches a cold, and one of the later humans gets it and nearly dies from it. And then the doctor, to get out of it, they were going to be, well, they did actually get questioned on it, like a court case, and the doctor found a cure. So that was like the end of the first two parts. And then the last two parts of the story, they arrived at the same spot as they were, but just 700 years later. And it was the other way around. The later humans were the servants of the monoids, because the monoids have taken over time. And they noticed this first because 700 years ago from that, they were building a human statue, and then when they went 700 years later, it wasn't like a human statue with a monoid head. So they thought, oh, that was a bit weird. And I thought at that point, oh, it's a good idea. That it's not a bad episode so far. And then it was just like, it weren't that interesting after that, to be honest. It was just kind of a repeat of what happened in the first two parts. Like, they didn't like the Doctor and his companions and all that sort of stuff, and it weren't boring or anything. It was interesting to see how the humans were servants to these, so like aliens, these monoids, but it weren't really interesting in terms of story. It wasn't one that gripped you, if you know what I mean. That's probably why these two writers never wrote for Doctor Who again, because they probably didn't. It's not like a story. It's it could have been, I don't know, maybe a 3-parter. But yeah, that's all I'm gonna say really about that bit. But it's got a good cliffhanger to end the arc at the end of part 4, where the Doctor turns invisible and he doesn't realise, but the companions do. And I like how that leads into the next episode, which is the Celestial Toy Room from the Celestial Toymaker story, which I won't be reviewing because it's a missing episode. But that's quite a good sort of ending for the episodes to keep people watching. But overall, the arc as a story, quite a good idea, I suppose, but it just wasn't well executed, and the costumes weren't right good. And I'm sure I was sure that I heard someone say this when a few months ago, that the humans, the later humans, didn't look like any different as they were 700 years ago, that's always like stuck in my mind every time I've watched this episode, because I've seen it about 2 or 3 times now. And when I saw it the first time, when I heard that person say that, I thought, I gave it a rewatch, and yeah, it's like, wow, fashion hasn't changed that much in 700 years. But that might be due to the arc, because it's like, it doesn't look to be like some sort of escape anywhere else on that planet. Obviously, they had like the monoid planet and all that sort of stuff and all that. The bit about the bomb and the monoids getting the revenge of the humans. That's a good idea. That was quite good in part 4. Probably the weakest part was probably part 3 and part 2 were alright. Part 1 and part 4 were probably the strongest because I like the bit with the bomb. But as an overall story, it's not something that gripped me, and it seemed like an emergency episode, kind of, because it weren't the normal writers, but they needed a story to fill in the time, to fill in the season, and to get from one episode to another. But you know, it is what it is. That's my review of it. There's nothing else to say. So yeah, it was just the matter of Dodo getting a cold, and that was the story. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. So I won't be reviewing. Is it story 24 now? I can't remember what I've done, but I think this is story 23 of Doctor Who Ever. I won't be reviewing story 24 because it's a Celestial Toymaker and it's a missing episode. But if you wanted me to review it, then I can always rewatch the telly snaps. But it's, from what I remember, it's a good story. But I won't be reviewing it because it is a missing episode. So I'm going to go straight into story number 25 next, The Gunfighters, which is the 7th story of the 3rd season. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'll hopefully see you in my next review. And bye.